Have you guys experienced the need to balance your mind, your emotions, and your body? And I'm just curious how that has unfolded in your lives.
This is such an interesting topic because, I work with a lot of addicts as well, and I have a highly addictive personality.
I think it's such a interesting topic, if you will. I celebrated 18 years in sobriety in May,
Wow,
and
that's huge.
Jason introduced us all as, good people looking to help people, want to do things for people. And I'm one of them. But while you were saying that, 18 plus years ago, that wouldn't have been the description of me.
Welcome to the Knocking Doors Down podcast. This is another roundtable discussion. If you didn't catch the last one, I had the beautiful Michelle Curiel of the Sobriety Playbook on. Gary Menkes, of course, at the Begin Again podcast, and a gentleman who, we had a cool one-on-one conversation. I was like, we got to get you in this roundtable mix. Joe Legovan, of course, founder of Create Vision Media Agency, and you've done so much cognitive behavioral therapy work with people. I mean, you're just doing awesome work. And I was like, I got to get these people together and have a great conversation because, these smiling faces, for those that aren't watching, I follow their work. I know the value that they bring to people. And I know the reason that you all do it just comes from your beautiful, good nature and a belief in something greater. So I'm honored that you would even join me on this thing here. Because I'm not very good about tooting my own horn, and me, who's really badass. But we were talking, Michelle and I, and about where do we jump in? And I thought this was great, Michelle, almost like it was delivered to you with these other gentlemen and yourself. The importance of balance and sobriety. I mean, what a continual life in general. But forget those of us who have abused substance or full-blown addiction to find that balance.
Yeah. It's like for me, my life is constantly evolving. If Joe doesn't know my story, so I was in active alcoholism and drug addiction for 25 years. So I just hit my 5-year mark, which I'm super grateful for. With that said, it's like, once you get to the 5-year mark, it's not like, oh, you just stop evolving. There's so much work to be done. There's so much more to be uncovered. And so I just thought today I would just present the idea of like, have you guys experienced the need to balance your mind, your emotions, and your body? And I'm just curious how that has unfolded in your lives.
So this is such an interesting topic because, I work with a lot of addicts as well. And I have a highly addictive personality. Like, I know that. And my method and I don't know if it's necessarily the most healthy method, is sometimes I'll have my like super addictive clients and I know they've just got this personality. And then we'll kind of shift that addiction into something else, which, like, I'm not the type that I'm going to do something a little bit, like I'm going to go crazy with it. Like if I get into fitness, I'm not just going to be like, I'm going to be in decent shape. I'm going to get in like crazy shape and just like, which obviously isn't the most healthy thing in the world to do. And I think ultimately there's some healing that like eventually needs to come around for that. But I think in the short term, almost when I'm talking to somebody who's got a highly addictive personality, it's like getting him on some rituals that will give him something else for his mind to do, something else for his body to do. But eventually it comes around to kind of what you're saying, where we do need to work through these things. We do need to actually get that balance back. So I almost think you'd be a good person to take it up from here, because I'm still in the mode of like getting these guys addicted to positive things, if you will, which is sometimes a cover up for the actual healing that needs to take place in a sense.
Yeah. Gary, do you have anything?
Yeah.
I didn't want to jump in again.
No, please. Like last time, right? Michelle kept talking. I was just riding her coattails last time. I think it's such a interesting topic, if you will. I'm Joe. And Michelle, congratulations on 5 years. That's incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I celebrated 18 years in sobriety in May,
Wow.
and
That's huge.
Jason introduced us all as, good people looking to help people, want to do things for people. And I'm one of them. But while you were saying that, 18 plus years ago, that wouldn't have been the description of me. And I wasn't necessarily a bad person. I just put myself in bad situations and I did a lot of bad things, but I always wanted somewhere in this soul to do well. But my girlfriend, who's my wife at the time, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she would say, Gary, you say all these things you want to be and all these things that you think that you are, but your actions speak louder than the words. Mm-hmm. And she was the first one to really hammer that home to me. And I was just saying it one time. But as Michelle was describing it, I'm convinced, and I think I want to be convinced that it's a lifelong learning process. Like there's no like graduating. There's always like, maybe there's a different sort of level of consciousness, of certainly not a level of sobriety. But I will tell you this, and you guys know, I'm in the process of moving. I drove 20 straight hours from New York to Florida. Talk about alcoholic, way of doing things. It was like pedal to the metal. Joe, I get it. Yeah. You said, is this what we're doing? Boom, I'm going to go all the way, and the alcoholic mind or the obsessive mind behind all of it was on full display for all to see, especially those close to me. Like my wife was like, wow, the maniac that I know and love, I am seeing him. I haven't seen him in this way in a while, and we kind of laughed and we kind of don't laugh too, because there was some obsessive compulsiveness going on, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. But after this trip was done, it dawned on me, like I hadn't thought about a drink the entire time. Now, I had a fair amount of stress. Like I said, no sleep, closing houses. I sold a house. I bought a new one. These are amazing problems that 18 years ago I wasn't good enough to have. And so that's like, I think, and I'd love to hear Joe and Michelle, all three of you, I think that was my main takeaway. So it's emotional sobriety, right? It's how do I get past the low self-esteem that still creeping up. I just turned 50 years old, and I still tell myself, excuse my language, who the do you think you are, Gary? Who the you don't deserve this. Like, who do you think you are? And I have to work through it, and it means calling my sponsor, somebody else. And again, tools we didn't have, I didn't have 18 plus years ago. And I'll also say this, I was sharing this with some of my brothers, my sober brothers. We have a Monday night group of men, group of some tough guy New Yorkers in this group. Jason, you love them. We read books. We read a book every Monday night, or we read part of a book every Monday night. We started it in COVID, and there's like 8 or 10 of us. And, it dawned on me, I'm like, if you told me when I was 22 years old that like I'd be in a book club with, 10 other dudes, reading The Untethered Soul, talking about spirituality and fatherhood and being a better person, I'd be like, what the happened to me? But here I am. Like, it's a good thing. So in a nutshell, in my roundabout crazy way, I guess, Michelle, it's a never ending. I love baseball. Baseball, it was drilled into me early on. Like, it is a never ending learning process. You will always be continuously learning. And I feel like it's the same way in life. And that's the same way. And I've been given that in sobriety, and I'm so grateful for it. Like, I'm 50 years old, and I feel like there's so much more ahead of me, and I'm just excited for what's to come.
Book club? What are you, Oprah here or something, Gary? Come on now.
Book club. You got to come down. You got to check it out.
And Gary, for those who don't know, Gary, your nickname is the Silver Fox. That is not going anywhere, all right?
That you gave to me. Yes, I'm wearing that proud. Yes, sir.
Yes. I want to kind of jump back to what you were talking about, though, Joe, where you start at. And I think I don't discredit it in any way, shape, or form, because what I really see, I personally get value out of the work that you're doing, Joe, is you and I have talked, my fitness journey is getting better. It's an area that I will never look like, and don't take this the wrong way, this is my thing, I will never look like Joe, so I just shouldn't even bother. I absolutely should bother. And I think what you do is you take the work you've been doing with people is a disempowering way of living to an empowering way. And by living empoweringly, which I think Gary reflected in what he just shared, you can uncover these things, these character flaws, defects, all that stuff. The I'm broken goes away. Like no one on this is broken. Never has been. Flawed. Yeah, we've been pretty flawed. We've consumed enough chemicals to kill a herd of elephants. But what it does is I think that work steps into an empowering place to be able to get to where, like Gary, 18 years later, sure, these things pop up, but like you got the tools. So I love the work that you're doing, that I think it's important to what even Michelle and Gary and what all the value that's offered, that's like, it's just taking someone from that terrible place and trying to get them into a better place to where then maybe they can examine because the rituals and routines have improved.
Right. No, that's such a good way to put it.
Knocking Doors Down by Carlos Vieira, now available wherever you get audiobooks.
I wasn't done partying, and I didn't want the binge to end. I think I knew that when I finally got home, I'd have to face what I had done, and I wasn't ready to do that. Being responsible for my actions wasn't something I was looking forward to. I had abandoned my wife and baby, my family, and my business. I wanted to avoid the shame of returning to what I had left behind. Even though I was not yet going home, I wasn't sure I had enough resources to continue the binge.
Click the link in the podcast description to find out more.
It's almost like there's different levels of thinking and different levels of I don't know if self-improvement's the right word, or like sobriety, but it's like, I think the initial stage of self-improvement is probably pretty ego driven, right? Like I want to look a certain way. I want to, appear a certain way. And then that, of course, eventually isn't satisfying, to the soul. And then you kind of got to grow past that. But to get somebody out of the stage of what I call like just sheer self-destruction, sometimes you take them to that initial stage of ego just to get them motivated in some form or fashion to eventually evolve past that into a more self-actualized, stage of probably higher spiritual development. But it's almost meeting people where they're at in a sense and taking them to that next level. And the people who are in that self-destructive mode, it's almost difficult to teach them right off the bat about like enlightenment or self-actualization or something, super deep. Yeah. Or they're like, no, I don't want to this, but show me how to get abs. Let's get abs, like that I can mess with or whatever. But it's cool because I think we're all on these different layers to kind of meet people where they're at and bring them up on the hierarchy of healing, if there is such a word,
No, valid point.
Yeah, I like that too, Joe. And it's interesting that you say that, because what I was thinking about is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because you were talking about self-actualization. I was like, okay, so those two things are connected. And then, how you were saying at the very beginning, Joe, that a lot of times what you will do is you will use someone's addictive nature to help propel them forward. And that is something that's necessary during that state of mind, because they're not in a place yet to do much of. I'm trying to think how to put this. It's good to use someone's addictive behavior, because for myself, I was in the same boat. For myself, I had a lot of addictive behavior, which was powerful for me because I just transferred that from addiction to drugs and alcohol to addiction to spirituality, which is why I have read like so many books. And I am studying so many religions, from Christianity to Hinduism to Buddhism to Gnosticism to like everything, right? But after, like, I would say about a year ago, y'all, I got to this point in my life where I realized, okay, I need to slow down, because my intellectual mind was on point, okay? And then but everything else was just like, not so great. I was bringing up this topic to Jason the other day, and I said, I can talk about the intellectual mind, but I'm pretty much like devoid of emotions. I can't really address that part. And I have to be honest with you guys. And I was like, Joe, I know that he can address the body. And Gary can tap into both. But I was just like, man, after 4 years of sobriety, I realized that I was, in a sense, like spiritually bypassing my emotions, sidestepping my emotional issues. Why is it that I'm having trouble looking at things that happened to me in the past? Why is it that I can't remember anything that happened to me prior to sobriety? Why can't I remember anything that happened in my childhood? Why is it that whenever I have a memory that comes up seemingly out of nowhere, why is it hard for me to look at that? And why is it hard for me to cry? It's like I brought up this topic in a sense because I'm really curious to see how you guys have been able to traverse like these obstacles that come up, because I have realized how truly imbalanced I personally am and how balanced I would like to be. And I know what steps to get there, but I'm always curious, to see what other people have to say, because, it's challenging to like look at your past with kind of just like, I don't know why this happened. I don't know why my heart aches. I don't know why I'm feeling sadness or sorrow. I don't know why, like when a loved one of mine died, like I felt nothing, it's a beautiful thing, like, and I'll kind of shift to what Gary was saying. When you're on the road and you're starting to get anxious and you're starting to get fearful and you're starting to feel all of these emotions, but those are gifts, because what it is, it's like the light of consciousness is shining light and saying, you haven't looked at this. What is this about? Are you willing to take a look at this? I'm begging you to look at this, because if you look at this and you identify it, then we can move on to like the next state of consciousness, right?
Yeah. What you just said, I feel like I've been doing examples of these nonstop. And I've been doing these sort of mind tricks. And I've been asking myself, Michelle, like, you know what, man, I don't want to feel this way. Why do I have to wake up feeling this way sometimes? Like, been sober 18 years, but I've done so much work on myself, and the truth is, my muscle memory, if you will, is still wired a certain way, and it's sort of a mind hack on shifting the perspective on all of it, like taking it instead of beating myself up. I heard this too, and it's so me. Like, nobody speaks as badly to me as I do. Nobody treats me as badly as I do. I heard someone else say that. When they said that, I was like, holy shit, yeah, that's me. So I'm subconsciously talking bad to myself, even when I don't even know it sometimes, and so it's like, it's this constant shift. And I'm big, for me, you're talking about the balance, and the balance for me is like being in the middle of the boat. I'm an extreme person, either direction, right? When I'm in the middle of the boat and I'm not too high, not too low, I'm conscious of my breath, which is something that I've been starting to learn lately, which I know Jason with Mike works with. In fact, he was the first person that brought it to my attention. Even now, I'm trying to be conscious of my breath and to breathe just a little slower. And I'm also laughing at myself. I'm like, these people think I probably just had like a thing of coffee, which I haven't. I'm just drinking water and non-caffeine. But it's like, it's an exercise in what story do I want to tell myself? I'm telling myself a bad story. Hey man, why don't you tell yourself a good story? Because they're both could be true, and they both are true. And Michelle, you're talking about, why can't, me too. I mean, I don't remember the last time I cried. I asked myself too, like, am I missing something? I love my parents. We've had our problems. I don't have that. I love them to death, but I don't have like that. If something happened, I feel like I'm missing something is where I'm getting at. You said it's a gift. Maybe I need to do some work on it. Maybe I need to get closer to it. whatever it may be. But I found this too, and it's something I've been using a lot lately, and it really, really has been helping me. So I'm going to share it. Is a woman I spoke to, she said she keeps a picture of her younger self, like at her desk, like her 5 or 4-year-old self before the shit like went haywire, right? Like before before whatever happened to us, our childhood trauma began. And she says, whenever I'm in a bad time, I just look at that little kid and I say, you know what? You're doing great, girl. You're doing great. And even though I don't have that picture, I don't have anything here, I have the mental picture of younger Gary, 5-year-old Gary. Jason, I've shared some of the stuff I think on one of your pods, stuff I saw as a kid, and stuff being worried about my sister, that protect, whatever, before it got there. And I'm mentally just telling myself, hey man, you know what, Gary? You're doing great. You're doing great, kid. And it's such a sort of simple exercise in the grand scheme of things, but it's also a really powerful exercise for me. It's like you take a step back, like, look where you're doing great, man. Like I start my day on my knees in prayer and gratitude. Like I didn't have my vocabulary, Jason, is different now than it was 18 years ago. Joe, Michelle, maybe you guys can relate. Like I didn't speak this way, right? Like I didn't, this isn't how we spoke, right? But this is what's ahead, and some of those things, I guess, Michelle, I'm trying to answer, has been helpful to me. Like, I guess it's an exercise of going easy on yourself. It's gonna, go easy on yourself. You're doing great.
I can relate though, Michelle, to what you're saying. 4 years of continual sobriety in February. And lately it's, as of this recording, my kids are going to be 16 and 15 within a month of each other, Irish twins. And I've had a lot of those things come up, like, the teenage angst. My dad wasn't there. I never got to be a head to my dad. He wasn't there. He was out using, and I just was like boundary, like I want nothing to do with you. Little did I know I'd eventually understand him all too well. But like going through this now with my kids, and it dawned on me, my goodness, I will never push my daughter on a swing again, most likely. That passed. When did that happen? When did these things happen? Oh yeah, I wasn't yet sober. I didn't take these things in. So I get what you're saying about certain things, like not necessarily triggering the emotion we think we should have about it. And I've tried to be gracious as possible to myself on that. Like both of my parents, health issues. I did actually get very emotional with my mom. My birthday, she would always call me, or always does, on my birthday at the time I was born. And I said to my partner, I looked at her and I said, gosh, I wonder if my mom, if that'll happen again this year. She did. After we got off the phone, Niagara Falls. It was just like, oh my God. So I think it's sometimes being okay with the emotion that we did have surrounding something and not putting an expectation on that I should have felt that way. Well, you didn't. I mean, I don't know what to do. And I can relate. I don't know about you, Joe. I think we did talk about this, some of those childhood gaps in memories. I get little windows of more and more the longer I've had sobriety, but lots of it's just a huge gap.
And the thing I'm getting out of everybody here is the level of self-awareness is through the roof, right? Like if we're going from like the super empathic person to the like unaware, individual who's just like coasting through life, like we're on the extreme spectrum of self-awareness, which can be a gift, but it can also be a curse, right? Yes. Because we're like hyper. Yeah. And when you're relating to the spirituality thing, I can relate to that too, because I, spent several years really getting deep into that and studying Eastern philosophy and different things. And I don't know if you ever read Autobiography of Yogi, but one of his gurus in that book, he was amazed because he didn't really stand out as like a spiritual guy, because he would talk about the weather, he'd talk about the news, or he'd talk about whatever. And he was just like flabbergasted by it, but he was extremely, spiritual. the way they kind of describe it, and in my book I kind of talk about this a little bit, is like the evolution is, it's almost like a video game theory. And this is kind of when it comes to emotion. And if you guys look at my page, today was actually 9 years since my sister took her own life. And that was a big thing for me, because with all the spirituality I'd studied, there was an aspect of me that didn't grieve in the way that you may suspect somebody to grieve, losing a sibling. And because I think it was kind of rooted in a sense of like, okay, she left her body. You know what I mean? Like, and if you have some spiritual concepts, you realize like, okay, this world is not our home. We have an eternal. But when I look at like the video game theory, we're kind of playing this game we call life, right? And we get real wrapped up in the game, like, oh my God, this thing just came out of nowhere. I'm getting super anxious, or oh my God, I got to make it to the next level. I'm super hyper and I got to do these things. And then we kind of realize, wait a second, this is a game. And that's kind of us discovering spirituality. And we're like, I'm not really this character in this game. I'm actually the guy on the couch playing the video game, right? But when you make that realization, you don't just like stop playing the game and go sit in the corner, right? Because why do we play games in the first place? We play games for the fun of them. And then I think we come to that realization where it's like, okay, I'm safe and sound. I'm on the couch. Whatever happens to this character in this dream life I'm living, it's not the end of the world, because I'm a spirit soul. I'm eternal, blah, 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 right? All those like fundamental spiritual truths we inherently have. I'm not this character in the game, but I still want to play the game to the best of my ability. And I think that's when we really like graduate to like, we're living life. We're still going after things we want, our desires, money, whatever it may be, some sort of experience, but we're not coming after that from a space of lack. We're coming out of a space of play, if you will. So we're still pursuing our life, our goals, but our emotions are going to be slightly different. Like, I don't think we are going to get as emotional about certain things that we might have been if we were still believing we were the character in the game, if that makes sense. So I don't know. That was just kind of my take on that. Like, but the way you described it is beautiful, because I can relate 100% to that. And you're kind of like, should I be feeling a certain way? But with your understanding, you're probably thinking about things slightly different than a typical human at this point with all your studies and stuff.
Have you dug into the archives of past Knocking Doors Down podcast episodes? The Knocking Doors Down podcast archive is available to you for free. Check it out. Here's a snippet from when Charlie Sheen was on the podcast.
There's another thing to consider that's just practical and real and true and rampant. Fentanyl. Yeah. Fentanyl. You keep around with street drugs these days. I mean, there's a 90% chance that it's going to have fentanyl. And there's a 90% chance you're not going to survive it.
This episode and so many more in the Knocking Doors Down archive. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumb up, leave a comment, and share with somebody else that you know will get value out of the Knocking Doors Down podcast.
Well, and I think you bring up such a great point, too, about play. Like, think about little kids. Joe, you got a little one. Gary, yours are, I think, about the same age as mine. How do we learn? Like, we forget that we learn so much through play. Like, doing this podcast for 5 years, people have been like, you edit that or you do that? And I realized, wow, it's all the stuff that people don't see, all the play and all the screw ups and all the wrong, so I wonder, if it's a part of that, like, I don't mean it in manipulation, but Michelle, give me your take, but like a play with our emotions or the fluidity of them, or, what I'm trying to get to? Like,
yeah, I think I might know what you're trying to get to. I may be wrong, but I'm kind of taking what Joe is saying and what Jason is saying too. And to go back to what Joe was saying is that my emotions are not the way that people typically respond to things. And it is because of all my studies and everything like that. However, there's a part of me that feels like I need to have more of an open heart when it comes to like family members that are going through something really, really emotional. So, Shakespeare, I believe, said, play the game, play the part. Or maybe it was somebody else, but somebody said that, and that made sense to me. It's like all the world is but a stage, but the men and women are merely players. I want to play my part in a sense of a sister that has a brother that's going through a lot of trauma right now. I don't want to be this super intellectual being that knows all of these spiritual teachings and is not able to see what he's going through right now in his stage of the game. Right. So I guess the part of me that's a little bit challenging these days is seeing the world for what it truly is and realizing, like, for example, when my best friend passed away, I was like, awesome, like level up, where's he going next?
I love that.
Like
Yeah.
he is such an amazing person. He put so much love and support for people and all these things while he was here on earth. And now, like, where is he going next? And I know that I can communicate with him still, even though I'm here in the terrestrial plane. And so I'm not sad because I don't feel like he's gone, because we speak to each other all the time. However, when I'm in the midst of other family members that are grieving, that don't know these things and haven't experienced them for themselves, I feel kind of like cold-hearted. And I kind of, in a sense, feel guilty because I'm sitting there just like at peace. And people are walking in, like, say, for example, there's a funeral and people are walking in and I see them. I haven't seen them for a long time. I get up and I hug them and I'm talking to them like everything's fine and everything's good. And it's not because I'm pretending like I'm okay. It's because I'm genuinely happy to see these people. And I know that death is like not final.
Gary?
Wow.
You
got something? I got, go ahead.
Well, the only thing I really can add to this is, things start going bad, if there's some facing some of this stuff, I know who to reach out to. That's for sure. But no, this is, I haven't been down this path. And Joe, when you just said that she left this, she left here, she went somewhere else. And Michelle, like you're describing it, like it's actually getting me excited in a way. Like, there is, and it brings me back to, I say all the time, like I've been given this sort of gift of an open mind, like, because there's been so many times in sobriety, before sobriety, when I, really in sobriety, that, I realize I don't know. Like, so stop thinking like, it, like, maybe there's another way here, Gary, maybe there's another way of thinking about all this, and again, it's, I think what we were talking about at the beginning, this constant, eagerness to learn, this constant, there's so much more out there than this little world here in this aura. But I'm grateful that I have that I want to learn, so like the stuff you guys are talking about now, like I'm writing stuff down, like I'm going to go look into these books when I get home, and I'm going to learn about this stuff. So
yeah.
And I just have to back up really quick too. I did cry. I sobbed about 4 years ago, Jason. I remember it was when I was doing them in amends to my dad. And you're bringing up the childhood stuff. It's something, when it comes to the childhood, when I get brought back there, it's when I get emotion. And when I was a kid, I kept that all in. I didn't cry when I was a kid, really, but I had to go make an amends to my dad. And long story short, my uncle had passed away. My dad had not spoken to his nephews or his sister in 10 years. And I just went there to basically kind of save his ass. Like, Dad, like, if you don't go to this wake, like, you have no shot, and I was like, you know what, this is a perfect time for me to make my amends to him too. And, I had done some really nasty stuff that I wasn't proud of. I called him out back in the day, and when I tell you, as soon as I started talking, guys, like I started sobbing. And I was just like, I'm sorry I did that to you. I'm sorry I did that. I'm sorry about that. And he was just like, it's all right. It's all right. Don't worry. And you know what? The moral of that story is he listened to what I was saying, and he went to the wake, and he's back with his sisters, and he's back with his nephews. And I didn't mean to shift, to where we were, but I had to get that in.
No, I think that really aligns with it. And Michelle, what you just shared, like I was, really sitting in and taking it in. And I think it's just that, I don't know, greater appreciation for the time we're here in this flesh suit, right? Like the time that we've got with it. And here, Joe, this is up your alley. I was talking with someone just simply about diet and exercise. And they're like, well, my diet's pretty decent. And, I walk every day. I'm like, it's all of life. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, rituals, routines, it's diet and exercise. Look, I know you walk every day, but you're talking to me because of the way you think. And then I ask you, well, what do you read? Well, you read you listen to you talk with people with a mentality. Your diet of taking that in is so you wonder why you're that way. And it's like to be able to open your mind to greater consciousness, like Joe and Michelle, you're talking, and spiritual, Joe, I mean, I saw that post with your sister and I knew I was going to talk to you, and I was just curious the state that you would be in 9 years later. It's that beauty that it's like, oh, I'll see her again. And I think that's like a joy of life and the gift of it. And understanding this is just one part of it, Michelle, I can only imagine that, like I was thinking my grandma's funeral, I was that way. Like seeing family members like, oh, it's great to see you. And a smile. Because I know I love my grandma. I know my grandma loves me. And that's not going to change. And that doesn't mean I didn't shed tears, but it's like, there will come a time I get to hang out again and my grandma gets to ask me to change light bulbs because I'm her only grandchild of the 20 over 5'9". So,
no, that's, culturally, there are cultures who literally celebrate when people die because they are so hyper aware of their spiritual state. And it's almost like we look around in a very unhealed culture and we wonder why we don't fit in.
Right.
We wonder what's wrong with us. And yet, like you had mentioned, with my sister's passing, cognitive therapy is all about the story we're telling ourselves affects our emotional state, right? So, and it's like pain is inevitable, but suffering is an option, right? Because suffering is our mental state, how we're thinking about what we're experiencing. Like my arm gets cut off, that sucks, right? Like physically that sucks, it's going to take away, but how am I going to perceive that story? Is that story, my arm got cut off because I'm a piece of because I suck and because I'm not worth it or whatever, right? Like all these different things I can make up. And based on that cognition, that's going to determine the level of suffering I'm gonna have. And if you're looking around and trying to have empathy with people who their mental cognitions are in such a dark place, it's going to be very difficult to almost connect to them in a sense, because you're going to be like, I just don't see what you're seeing, right? Like, I just don't see why you're so in this negative state around it. And for me, when I look at what happened to my sister, it's like, okay, I could view it from a strictly human standpoint and be like, oh my God, I lost my only sibling. She took her own life. This is so terrible. I'm never going to see her again. That's going to bring up a ton of negative emotions for me, right? Now, when I look at it and I will cry, I will have like these beautiful emotions that come around it, but it is a sense of, like you had said, like, well, I know she's still here. I know she's still existing. I know this thing was a lesson for me and something I can help other people with. That cognition is way different than the material cognition. And my experience of that situation is going to be vastly different between what story I'm telling myself. And spirituality is the ultimate cognitive therapy, because you are literally telling a story about life that has a positive ending to it, right? Because you're an eternal being having a temporary human experience. That right there is an extremely positive cognition. And that's why I try to integrate with my clients some form of spirituality. And I don't care what it is, but that's going to help your mental state so much, which obviously you guys know from the sobriety world, you have to find some semblance of a higher power just to help your mental state out. And I think if I just purely come with therapy or purely come with the physical, there's a huge aspect of healing that is left out, you know?
Yeah.
That's so interesting. It really is. It's funny, or maybe it's just the universe at work again. I think you know this, Jason. I'm not sure, but I had a widowmaker heart attack almost 5 years ago, and I was in relatively good shape. I wasn't overweight. Like, it's just a family thing or a fluke. And literally was walking to the train 5 o'clock in the morning. Thought I had heartburn. Thought it was like the chicken wings I had last night. Long story short, I turned around and it was a widowmaker heart attack. I made it back to the house. My wife rushed me to the hospital, put 2 stents in, and I made it. And I bring that up because after that, I have such a fear, not of past, not of dying, not me. I have such a fear of leaving my family. And I have a fear that my kids are going to grow up without a dad. My kids are not quite as old as yours. They're 11 and 9, 16 months apart, almost Irish twins there. And it cropped up again, I guess, with all this, stress and anxiety I've been doing lately, whatever. But I was like, I'm going to get down to Florida. I feel a flutter in my chest. I'm like, fuck is that? And I'm like, I'm going to get down to Florida. What happens if something, I'm going to leave them when I get there. These are the things that enter my mind, Joe. Not necessarily I tell myself, that enter my mind, and I need to work through this stuff. And we're reading this book the second time in a row, Untethered Soul. And, we're in the chapter last week. It's towards the end about how embracing the concept of death is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. And what you guys are talking about is even a deeper level. And that's why I'm like really keen into what you're saying. But after even reading this chapter, and I guess I missed it the first time I read it, but it's lessened that fear. It was so bad. And I'm bringing it up to you because I'd love to hear what you think, what your thoughts are. Like, I couldn't even look at a family picture of the 4 of us and be like, that guy's not going to be there, man. Like, and then you start asking yourself all the other stuff. But part of the book is like, again, and when I break it down, really only here, and I say that a lot, even though you guys are at a different level saying it, but we're only here for a short period of time, right, Michelle? Like, we're only here for a short period of time. Let's make the best of it, and I think, Joe and Michelle, what you're saying, like, that statement could sound really morbid. Hey, we're only here for a short period of time. So,
Yeah.
Right.
Look, it sounds beautiful. But hey, man, we're here for a short period of time. Let's make it the best short period of time that we possibly can. Right. So it's like, again, it's like a perspective shift. And maybe I'm not articulating it as well as you two doctors and you up there, Jason. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm the dumb it down person. I'm the dumb it down guy. Like, it's a simple sort of shift in perspective. And I think it's something I kind of do on a daily basis from the second I wake up, because I can wake up feeling a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of financial fear, but then I work my way out of it quickly, whether I have to make a phone call or whether I don't, and it's just a shift and gratitude and being grateful. We throw that word around so much, like, hey, be grateful, be great. I have so much gratitude. My prayers are rooted in deep gratitude. They are. Thank you for this day. Thank you for my family, right? And again, part of the vocabulary that I never had before, we add just like we were saying earlier, our prayers evolve. My prayers evolve, right? Let me help someone today. That's been one of my prayers. Let me help one person today. Jason, I've said it a million times, the podcast, let's help one person today. And now I'm getting a little greedier. Maybe it's growing a little bit. And I'm gonna help maybe a couple more than one person today. But it's a mind shift. It's a perspective shift for me, at least. That I think, again, I'm the dumb it down guy here. I think it's in a way what we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, and I think if we remove it from the spiritual sense too, it aligns with our value sets too, right? Like, I don't know about you guys. I've been to, having gone to funeral services, I kind of value the person that's got the smile on in that day. and plays that role, so to speak, like you were talking about, Michelle. I value the kind of guy that's, Gary for me now is the guy that it's like, hey, what's going on? And we're going to talk that way. Joe, it's just simply like, man, this dude shared his life story with me, and I'm just kicking ass, a father, a husband, and I know that more things are going to come up that I could shoot you a DM, and it's the conversation can be there. So I think it's kind of has a lot to do with values too, and being a little comfortable in our skin. Like, I don't know, I the last funeral service I had to go to, I found it beautiful because much like, what you were sharing with your dad, Gary, that it was beautiful that someone's life on this plane of existence brought people together.
Absolutely.
And I know it sucks, and we all say we got to find a different reason to get together other than a funeral.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like, that is a beautiful celebration, or somebody coming up. Like, I remember somebody I didn't even know. Your grandma I was doing radio at the time. She would listen every morning, and she would have all of her church friends there, this prayer group, and they're listening to her grandson say the most foul you can on broadcast radio. And they'd be like, what are you listening? That's my grandson, with a smile. And then right after, open the Bible and go into her prayer group study. It's like, come on, I mean, I wouldn't have known that otherwise. So I think it is those. You know what I'm saying? Somebody knows what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying. May I interject?
Yes, please.
So I'm so grateful that you mentioned something. You said being comfortable with being in my skin. That is something that I'm still working on, y'all. Like, so much lately. And I'm grateful that you said that, because now I feel like I can be myself a little bit more right now. Because if I was in Gary's situation and I was having like all of these character defects arise because of my spiritual studies, I know that that's like a day to celebrate something that I have the opportunity to completely transmute. Something is going to get totally transformed if I allow the light of consciousness to shine upon it. Last night, I was meditating about this conversation that we're having, and I was talking to my inner being, and I was saying, what the topic is, what we're going to be talking about and everything. And he said, one of the keys to balance is unveiling more consciousness. And so what he communicated to me, I wrote down, and I would like to share it with you guys if you don't mind.
Yeah,
please.
No.
Okay, so it's a metaphor about a snow globe. What it is going to do, it's going to illustrate how our consciousness can become trapped by our character defects. A globe, I have it right here. I'm just going to show it to you guys. Part of me was just like, don't show it. It's too corny, but I'm going to show it anyway. Okay, so this globe can be clouded by the flurry of snow, which is basically like our mind. It gets obscured by the whirlwind of the flaws and of our negative traits, right? But by understanding this analogy that I'm about to present to you guys, it's going to help you recognize and address these defects by allowing your true self to shine through the barriers. So, this is what he said. He said, so imagine your consciousness is the scene inside of this snow globe, yearning to express its full potential once it is released. Just like the snow globe's glass confines and shapes the scene within, our vices trap and obscure our true selves. To be relieved from the bondage of self and to achieve self-realization in this lifetime, to be born again and to uncover that which you have always been, you must be willing to identify and address every single character defect. This process will shatter the barriers, allowing this consciousness to escape and emanate its light unobstructed.
That's powerful. Super powerful. I love that.
So what I got during that meditation is that the visualization of every single time, like Gary, every single time that you have anxiety, that character defect arise, and you find out what that root cause of that anxiety is, this glass will be shattered, and then the light of consciousness will escape. Every time that you feel fear, and then you get to the root cause of that, you shatter this glass, and then more consciousness gets shine upon more character defects. So when we're going through our day and we're feeling that anxiety, depression, sorrow, agitation, doubt, whatever character defect decides to sit in the driver's seat, right? Because there's more light of consciousness that has been broken, we have more light that is shining upon those character defects, and then we can identify them quicker, and then we can get to identifying more and more and more and more. And for myself, the way that my life has been for the past couple of years is that it's just been rapid progress. And that's not an egoic thing. It's just the progress is going as fast as I allow it to. If I'm willing to do the work, if I'm doing prayer, meditation, introspection, chanting, if I'm reading spiritual books, if I'm doing service work, if I'm doing all of these things and constantly in a place of self-observation, then I will continue to evolve. Quick.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Right. Beautiful.
Yeah. I think it goes back to, and I don't, I've had so many conversations. I'm trying to remember all the individual ones that we've had, but I think it's. I said when I was talking to a gentleman, did a recording before this, like that point of consciousness about something, you are fucked, because once you know, you don't get to go back. You can't have a veil of ignorance about it anymore. Like it's there, it's in front of you. You know, like for me, I got the alcohol out of the way, then I realized, oh my goodness, I keep looking for a counterpart, a woman, to fulfill this thing that no one else other than me could ever fulfill. I got some work to do on me before I can be with someone that is a mere reflection that is healthy. Like that, like no longer, I can no longer have someone be like, will you be my booty call? No, not at all. Sorry, that's not even an option in my life. Goodness forbid I ended up single again. Never going to exist again. Like these things, like, no. So it's like, once that veil is lifted, I get what you're saying. Thank you, Michelle. You better be writing a book, by the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's cool too, because like this talk for sure is bringing so many things to the surface for me as well. Like, because the level of, again, I'll say it's like the self-awareness and accountability is like through the roof. And it's funny because people talk, there's a lot of talk about like narcissism nowadays, right? Like narcissists are like so unaware. And a lot of people will say that these narcissists are unaware and they're because they're evil or because they're bad people. And I do work in the jail. And I've done that for like a decade. I talk to people who have done some of the most horrific things in the world, right? And you think you're going to meet narcissists, but what you will meet are the most self-aware, guilt-ridden individuals that have so much self-hatred. And I really think when we are looking at our faults, if you will, having a level of compassion is what enables us to look at ourselves, because it's like if we think narcissists are just like delusional, thinking they're all great, they're all awesome, usually they're subconsciously, they know they have a ton of faults, they just won't look at them, right? But when you talk to a group like this, there's so much self-awareness, and a lot of that came from the idea that you can have compassion for your faults, you can look at your issues, you can look at your addictions in a compassionate way in order to move past them, because the ego doesn't want us to see itself, right? It wants to hide. And just like your snow globe analogy, when we and like you had said, Jason, when you see these things, you can't like unsee them, right? And it's almost like if you shake up the snow globe, oh shit, there's a ton of faults around here. Like I thought I was doing awesome, but now I'm starting to look at myself. And so to have like an equal amount of compassion along with the self-awareness is like key to keep it going. Because if we start judging ourselves, if we start condemning ourselves for our faults, then we're going to go back and put our head back in the sand, of all these different, vices and things that we turn to, as opposed to being able to look at them And like you guys had said before, like looking at your younger self and telling them good job, and being able to pat yourself on the back and being able to have self-compassion. And that's one of the first things I'll work with the inmates is saying, like, you do know that you're a good person, right? Like, yes, you've made bad decisions, but you're a good person. And they will look at me like they've never heard that before. They don't believe it. They can't imagine that. And just starting with that, like you are, and that is what enables them to start looking at their flaws in a more authentic way. And so if it can almost be detrimental if we get so self-aware, but we don't have the compassion, because we almost need the compassion to keep up with the self-awareness. Because I know some of the shit I've done, think, said, I look back at and I'm like, oh, that was brutal. Like, why did I, I'm going to have a lot of guilt there. But if I can look at that through a really, self-loving way, it's going to be easier to process these things, which I think that's what addiction a lot of times does, right? It buries our head in the sand, so we never have to process our negative things that we've done or felt or said or whatever, right?
Absolutely. I'll just jump in quick, with the whole analogy of the snow globe. I can't help but think of, I'll do the same example. Like when I made that amends to my dad, and you read about it, and it was told to me, like, as soon as that was done, I was free of it. I was free. Like, and I've had some long and difficult, years with him, right? But as soon as that happened, and I'm telling you, the second that happened, yes, I sobbed and I said I was sorry. Leading up to there, it was always like, what about me? What about all the stuff that happened to me? What about all the stuff that, that I saw as a kid? I'm not the one that's supposed to say sorry. Like, how am I supposed to say sorry? What was my role in it? I was just there, But man, like, I'm just thinking the snow globe for my dad and I's relationship was shattered, and we're free of it. And our relationship right now, because of that, is on a different level and is a beautiful place. And even like my wife, because my parents drive her nuts too with how I'm treated or I've been treated. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. He and I are good now. Like, we're on an even playing field. I'm truthful with him and he's truthful with me. We both know like where we stand. And so that exercise, and again, in the grand scheme of things, while we're on this earth, right, this little atom floating around this earth for such a short period of time, in the grand scheme of things it's a speck, right? While we're here, it's so big. And that, again, I'm going back to it. The snow globe was shattered, and you said the consciousness of light. And he's texting me now, like, it's completely different. We're on a different level, and it's because of that. So, but I guess what I'm saying also is I have a lot of different snow globes that I need to work on.
I think we all do. Well, let's bring the body into this, because Michelle, you had mentioned that about maybe being uncomfortable. And I want to start with you on this one, Joe, because again, a guy that's really focused on his fitness. You look great without a shirt on. There's no other way to put it, right? You've done the work. But I think people would have a misconception that means Joe is never uncomfortable physically or at all. And I know that's not the case because we've had the conversation.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And that's of course like brings up a whole nother topic, right? Of like self-acceptance and those type of things. I know, so the story that comes to mind is kind of like with Michelle. Like when I was younger, I got really into spirituality, like I said, and I love that. Like that is what has given me my foundation to do any of the work I do now, right? Like without that, I would be a wreck. But there was a point where I remember I was like not eating a lot. I was just kind of neglecting my shell because I was just kind of like, this is, who cares about this whole body thing? Like, I don't really care. And, and I wasn't eating, I was kind of like what you call a junk food vegetarian. I was just like living off of donuts and stuff. And because it was like, who cares? This is just my body, this is just my meat, flesh, and blah, blah, blah. And then I remember there was one night where I felt really bad because I felt like I had neglected this physical existence that was such a gift for my soul's journey that I went the complete opposite, the addiction part of me, that now I'm just like psychotic, although there are areas that I neglect. Like I know I need to stretch more, like I'm the most tight human being in the world. But it's like there are certain things where I was like, no, I'm gonna take care of this at such a high level because it is my body right now. I am here right now. I am having a physical existence. And part of, fully integrating spirituality is integrating with our current moment, right? And existing as we are. And so I think for me, that's been a big driver of it. Now, the physical fitness aspect and stuff, that's almost like my coach had originally said to me, because when I first came out, it was like super high consciousness stuff. I would be speaking about these things. And my coach was like, you're not going to attract in the people who need you necessarily unless you show them the things that you got to give people what they want in order to give them what they need. And he kind of flipped my brain on that. So that's like, if you look at my page, you're like, oh, this douchey, ripped guy with, nice cars and stuff. But it's funny because those are the guys that'll get in there and then they'll be like, oh, that's dope. I like that car. Or, oh, I want to look like you and blah, blah. And then later on, they're like, man, I'm so depressed. Like, I don't know what the meaning of life is. And then I can kind of start to spoon feed them these type of ideas, and it's coming from a different place. But I don't know. I guess around that whole idea, it's just me just kind of integrating into this is my physical existence now, and I'm going to rock it as best as I possibly can, enjoy it, treat it well, make it look as good as possible, because why not? You know what I mean? Like, this is the game of life. Why not play in the highest degree I possibly can? And, leave all the chips on the table when I'm gone,
I just think that's genius. I just must say, Joe, whoever told you, like, that's not going to pull anybody in, because I don't know. There's just, I guess, this really stubborn part of me as far as with my content that I want to tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Like, I don't lure people in with things that maybe they want to hear, and then I'll tell them what they need to hear. Like, I just go straight for the jugular kind of type thing, And,
I love that, though. That's good.
And the thing is that most people don't want to hear it. Like the only thing that I ever get is DMs from dudes that want to flirt with me. It's no one ever saying, you know what, you were talking about ascension. Can you please help me with this, and this, or can you know what I mean? Like, nobody does any of that. But in regards to like the physical body, so I think it was on one of your posts, Joe, the other day, I had said, I've lost 131 pounds so far in sobriety. So I was 300 pounds whenever I came in to sobriety. Wow. My skin was gray. I was temporarily in a wheelchair. I had lost the ability to speak because I did not know how I was going to go the rest of my life without drugs or alcohol. Right. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm 39 years old and it's hard for me to walk. What's that about? And then I got a sponsor that was pushing like, I'm not the body, I am not the mind, mortal self I am. He was the type of person that I absolutely love and adore, but he would, lay on the couch and eat chips and stuff. Like, he wouldn't take care of his physical vehicle either. But then I started to realize, what, I've been neglecting this, my body. I mean, for the past 15 years or so, as a kid up until high school, I was an athlete. But after that, like, I got into drugs and I got lazy and I just did whatever I wanted. So I gained all that weight. But now, like for myself, and I still have like 24 more pounds to lose. The reason why I focus on my physical vehicle is to do God's will. And it's because I want to be able to be there to serve my parents. I want to be able to pick them up off the floor. I want to be able to go and play with my nieces in the pool and throw them around like rag dolls, like they like. And I want to be able to just be in the world. I want to explore. Like, I like to go hiking almost every single day. I love to play basketball, and I'm almost 45 years old, and I play with my fiance, which is he's younger than I am. But he and I like keep up with each other like really, really well. I feel like if I'm ever stuck in my head, like about stress or anxiety about something that I can't change, I go and I move. And then what's amazing for me is when I start to walk, when I start to play basketball, that's when it's like I'm putting like oil on the wheels, and like my wheels start turning, there's more clarity, and then my inner being starts to speak to me, and I start to get answers and everything. And it's because I'm moving. The body is so important. Like when I work out, when I go to the gym, when I hike and everything, it's not because I want people to be attracted to me. I actually cannot stand that. I hate, and that's something I need to work on, I guess. I don't know, but I cannot stand when somebody just comments on the way that I look. I'm like, you, and I suppose it's because of this. I've had a lot of trauma around the way that I look, and I've gone through a lot of, bad things happened to me when I was in active alcoholism and drug addiction. And so because of my look, which is why I gained so much weight as a protective mechanism, don't look at me, don't touch me, don't touch me, don't come near me. Now I'm 300 pounds. No one's going to touch me. Perfect, And so now I'm trying my best to settle into this new body. And when I look into the mirror, I remember like at the beginning of the year, I was doing a fitness contest, and I told my fiance, I was like, is that mirror what I actually look like? Is that me? And he was like, yes, that's your reflection. It's not one of those mirrors that is like a skinny mirror, or it's, it doesn't have a filter on it. It's just what you look like. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's interesting.
That's awesome. Wow.
Well, and I kind of off where you started and Joe, you left off. I think I hope the takeaway people could get here, and I'm going to compliment all three of you, is Joe, exactly what you said about what you do worked, because I don't remember if I reached out to you or you reached out to me or how we met, but I was like, oh, this guy's making some happen. Then to uncover through conversation more than meets the eye. Michelle, I was in a place, and as were you, where I needed your messaging. Gary, the same type of stuff. I needed, like, I wasn't connecting with the recovery community here. I needed a recovery bro, a guy who just we could throw out the language and just be on that plane. So I think everybody here, and why I appreciate you guys, it's all genuine. Everything that's put out there, Joe is doing well. He does have some nice cars. He's done smart business stuff. He does have a beautiful wife and a wonderful little kid. Gary does, do all these things through his podcast. Michelle, this is so genuine to you, and it's going to land with those individuals that it should. Yes, Michelle, you're a pretty lady. You are going to get some of those guys. I don't know what to tell you. And I know, because you've been so vulnerable about the things that did happen to you, and it's unfortunate, but it's just a reality, we kind of got to live with. I find more people that reach out now. You're kind of okay, thanks. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, that was really good. I was like, oh, you were just trying to get my attention. I see. So that's how people try to get my attention. So, I think it's all genuine. It all comes from that place, and everything that leads up to the point you decide to put something out there into the universe and vulnerably share it, And I think it's important. I know it's important because I do know each of you helps at least one person. Gary?
Yeah.
Take us home, Gary.
Well, I think it's really important to share our stories more and more each day. I really, really do. And doesn't mean it's easy. Michelle, I know your story too. And it's, your vulnerability, like Jason said, is incredible. It is, and you share it so openly and honestly. Now you're down this incredible path where you are. And just really quick too, I'm glad you talked about the physical part, both of you, because I'm glad we went there. I played sports my whole life too. I loved sports and certainly competitive. But I found hiking, Michelle, in COVID. And I'll be quick with this, but I do it for my mind. My best ideas come when I'm on that hiking trail, sweating, and I'm alone, and it's just me and the path or nature. And that's where all my stuff comes. That's where I could be in such a rut, and I'll go take a walk, and I'll start sweating. Those endorphins start coming in. I was going to ask you that. Like, that is real. That is, you said it yourself. What's the saying, right, Michelle? Move a foot, move a muscle, change a thought, or something like that. Like, that is real for this guy for sure. Like, when I'm sitting and I'm lazy, I want to be lazy, and I'll go down the rabbit hole. But I know that this guy needs to go out and exercise and get the sweat going. Then I'm back to being unstoppable. It's almost like, man, how do I bottle? You ever feel that way? Like when you guys are working out, right, Joe? Like, hey, man, how do I bottle this? Put this in a bottle. We can really, be billionaires, the four of us for sure. Like if I can bottle these endorphins. But that's not how it works. We need to put in the work, right? You can't just take a shot of it. I guess we've all tried, or certainly some of us have tried shots.
Mainline
telling our
endorphins.
telling our stories is telling our stories is super important, and there's nothing that makes me more excited than hearing, a story like Michelle's, like Joe's, like Jason's, complete comeback stories. I say this all the time, Jason. Flint has given me the okay without even knowing it, that the best people he knows or has met are people in our community and recovery. I was like, Flint, I feel the same way. I just never kind of said it out loud. He's like, of course, man. We've all been through the shit. We've come out of it. Like we've all done it. And now we're here. This community is a little different. Recover out loud. I didn't even know what that meant before I started this podcast, and I can't also help, and I'll let you guys take it from here. But as I'm sitting here for this hour with the three of you, thinking there's no coincidence. I came here, I said a quick prayer coming on, like, God, please help me help someone today. Please speak through me, and please let me, help the three of you somehow. But as we started talking, I'm like, there's no, that's the ego. That's the low self-esteem guy. Like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to help these three. Like I don't belong here. But the truth is, I do, man. Like I do, and the universe put us together for sure, and there's no coincidences that the four of us are here. Jason, you put it together, and I'm just super grateful to be here, guys.
Same.
Grateful for you too.
Gary.
Yeah, all you guys' personalities shine through this super good, and you're right. The rehabilitation community or the sober community is some of the most healed people you will meet in life, because they have taken that time to really look at themselves. Even the person who never did anything their whole life, I don't know, Bob, just lived a perfect life. You will meet the most healed people that are on the path of sobriety, because they have seen the dark night of the soul. And I see it in all you guys, just the authenticity, and it does enliven me as well. So thank you guys.
Absolutely. Yes, we spent a lot of time imbibing the dark spirits, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Michelle.
I'm just so grateful for y'all. So grateful for today. As Gary was talking about how he did that prayer right before he got on. And it's interesting because the longer that I stay on this spiritual path, the easier it is for me to identify certain egos whenever they try to crop up and get in my way, right? And so a couple of days ago, I started looking through Joe's Instagram, and I was like, CBT, oh, this is something therapist. And then, so my ego, the one that always feels inferior to other people, was like, you don't talk about your perception. He knows more than you. You don't know anything. As a matter of fact, just let the other guys take the reins and take a seat. I had even told Jason, I had sent him a message. I was like, can you take the reins on this one? Because I started having that self-doubt creep in and everything. But the interesting thing is, though, is once we start to interface with each other, it's like, oh, that was all an illusion, and I can see, because whenever I start to communicate with someone face to face, it's like, you can clearly see, these are good people. So I'm just grateful to spend time with you guys, and thank you for sharing so much with such an open heart and so much honesty and so much love. And Jason, thank you for putting this together, because I was telling you the other day, I said, you know what, I'm not feeling 100%. And you were like, are you still good to show up? And I was like, dude, if I don't talk about spirituality and sobriety, I feel like I'm dying. So I'll be there.
Well, first and foremost, Go ahead, Joe.
I'm sorry to cut you. I would say you're probably one of the best cognitive behavioral therapists out there with your concept of spirituality. I mean, I can just see it oozing through you. Like, I wish some of my clients would be perceiving the way you are. So I respect and honor your path, and I know it's legit. I could definitely see it coming through you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And my questioning was more a concern for my friend. Just like, are
I
you
know.
good?
I know.
And I just want to thank you guys. I don't care what platform, even if this wasn't released, but I'm honored that we can release this to people that I know will get value out of it. But we're in such a weird time in this world, in this country, and it's so refreshing for me with some of the other work I do and political stuff getting thrown, which I hate politics, but to be able to sit with 4 people that I respect what you've done with your life. I appreciate the knowledge that you share and the growing friendships, to just have a real conversation like people and treat each other well and allow one another to bring some value and perspective, and just be like, I haven't thought of that. Or, it's really refreshing. Because
thanks for bringing us together.
There is no coincidence, like Gary said. I needed this today, so thank you.
For sure. Yeah.
I'll just say that's it. I got so much out of this, guys. I really did. You're touching upon it, Jason. Come here, the 4 of us. We want to start talking about some stuff and see where it goes. And look, the 4 of us, like, at least speak for myself. Like, I'm breathing. I'm lighter right now. I feel great, Jason.
Yes.
Same. Thank you, Jason.
Yes. Let's start with Gary. Gary, if people want to find out more about you, get connected, the Begin Again podcast, what's the best way?
My Instagram is probably the best spot to find me. DM me, the Begin Again podcast. I have a website, thebeginagainpodcast.com. Come check it out. It's stories. It's comeback stories. It's all the stuff we're talking about here. It's the whole umbrella. So yeah, come check me out.
Joe.
Same. Instagram's probably the best way, and create mindset. I think I just changed my Instagram.
Create vision?
Create vision mindset. Or what did I do? Fuck, I can't remember. Just type in create vision. It probably will come up. But yeah, if you see abs, you're on the right page.
Yeah.
Michelle.
So you can find me on Instagram and YouTube primarily at the Sobriety Playbook. If you are interested in detoxing your senses, I have a series on Patreon that is called Unraveling the Matrix of the Mind. So if you're interested in that, all you would do is search Breathe and Rise Collective. We have some amazing content on there. If you are in the San Antonio, Texas area, on Tuesday evenings, we do breath work and sound healing. And so it's really an amazing, like, immersive, like, beautiful experience surrounding yourself with other conscious beings that are on this spiritual path, so that you don't have to do this alone. If you have any questions in regards to anything I said, just send me a DM on the Sobriety Playbook on Instagram.
Well, on that note, no outside solutions to inside problems, and yo, keep knocking doors down.